Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to join us to talk about great leadership in difficult times. So, we're going to spend a lot of time together today focused on understanding what some of us are dealing with and really walking away with some practical things that we can do to deal with some of the things that we might be dealing with inside organizations. So to get started, I'd like to share a little bit about SIGRID Group. So first of all, I want to say hello. My name is Christy Stepp. I am here with my SIGRID colleagues. We've got Mike Durgis, we've got Aaron Fitzpatrick, we've got Cheryl Zach, and you will be interacting with all of us during this time we spend together today. We are a management, search, and organizational consulting firm. And part of what we do is really support our clients around what we like to call the employee life cycle. So you can see that image over to the right, but we do everything from recruiting, onboarding, development, succession. Sometimes people get promoted and transferred and don't get onboarding. So we help with that. We call it reboarding. Sometimes people become alumni and transition out, and sometimes we help with that. We do a lot of work with culture and environment too. I want to make sure that we just knew who you
Any questions
let you
from
know
what
who
you
we
heard
are.
on our meeting? No questions there? Okay. I'm actually listening.
And Mike is going to mute anyone. If you are not muted, just go in and mute. But I want to make sure that you know that you can put chats into the chat, and we will be monitoring that. We'll be using breakout rooms, and you can also raise your hand if you have questions because we want this to be interactive. So, what are we going to cover in our time together today? We're going to start out talking about great leadership and good intent. We're going to then dig into the science behind what we are calling emotional contagion. Then we're going to talk about great leaders, challenging times, and emotional contagion. So, like mixing that all together. And then understanding the leadership styles where we might have good intent, but really are driving negative emotional contagion, and we might not even be aware of it. Then we're going to talk about some actions you can take to drive emotional contagion in a positive way. And then we're going to have some Q&A and close. One of the most important things I want to share with you is our philosophy around leadership. So you'll see the word leadership or leader, and I want to really emphasize that everyone is leading, whether you have direct reports or not, especially in organizations today. So whether you have to influence people as a peer, if you're a team lead, if you're leading a project, everyone has to lead in some point. So whether you have, 15 direct reports or zero, this is still very, very important. As I shared earlier, and I'm going to share it again because I think it's important for those who may have joined just a little later, that when I think about leadership, and we talk about leadership today, it doesn't matter whether you have 50 people reporting in your organization or you have zero, because everyone has a role as a leader. Sometimes we'll find ourselves leading a team. Sometimes you have to lead a peer. You may be serving um, as a mentor to someone or mentoring. All of those pieces require leadership. So we're demonstrating leadership skills, and it really doesn't matter what the org chart looks like, it's how we show up. So great leaders have good intent, and we all have it. And I'm speaking from a very humble place. Sometimes our good intent lands exactly the way we want it to, and sometimes it doesn't. So effective leadership requires more than just that good intent. We have to ensure our actions produce the desired outcomes and avoid negative unintended consequences. So that's where this whole concept of emotional contagion comes from. So let's get right into it. So we define it as the subconscious transfer of emotions from one person to another. And I want you to think about this. How many times have you been in a great mood? You walked into a room with some other people, and all of a sudden you felt your mood shifting. It happens all the time. We're just naming what it is. It's called emotional contagion. How we feel and our emotions are something that can impact other people. But why does it matter? People, especially managers, will set the tone for their teams. And this is an interesting and tricky piece here. We set the emotional tone for our teams. One of the things that we've been told over time is relationships are absolutely critical. So we need to um, have great relationships with people who we lead, whether they directly report to us, whether it's dotted line, whether I'm managing a team, a project. But we talk about that, but we don't always think about how we show up before we walk into a room or before we get on a call. So the impact, employees will look to their leaders for clues on how to interpret situations, and they're focusing on the words that are coming out of your mouth, but also your tone and your body language. So in organizations, sometimes things are cascaded and you have the responsibility to share information. You might have gotten some talking points. You can share those talking points, but if at a gut level you don't agree or you have not processed what it is that you're sharing, people will pick up anxiety. They'll pick up all types of things around the information you're communicating, and it may not land the way you want it to or how you intend it. So the big piece here, emotions are contagious, but they're especially contagious from people, leaders during challenging times. The science behind emotional contagion. So you're probably like, well, why does that happen? Why would my mood impact others? Well, there's two big scientific pieces. And the first one is mirror neurons. So many of us have heard about them. And we mostly see it with babies. So if you hold a baby and you smile at the baby will mimic. And we do that all the time. We're not aware of it, but we naturally mimic the emotions and the behaviors of those around us. And that has actually been set up to protect us, to keep us safe. So that mirroring takes place. The second piece that we have, and many of you have heard of this too, is limbic resonance. And that just means that we pick up emotional signs unconsciously. So we are sensing how people are behaving and all types of things beyond what people are saying out of their mouths, and managerial impact. So whether, and I'm saying this once again, whether you have zero direct reports and you're leading a project or a team, or whether you have a large organization, positive and negative emotions ripple through teams. So we have to be aware that all the three of these things, if you throw them in a bowl and mix them up, you can see how this is showing up. And we have the science behind why we have to be aware and thoughtful, especially when organizations are going through challenging times. So, great leaders, challenging times, and emotional contagion. The best people leaders create strong relationships with their team members. So, if you think back over your career to your best leaders, you probably had a very strong and trusting relationship with that individual. And you got to see that person as a human. So you got to see them at their best, at their worst, emotional, all of those pieces, because that's what builds authentic relationships. Now, through that authentic communication, the trust is built. So we are working to make sure that people see us not as a robot or as someone who is always so structured or thoughtful about what they say before they come out their mouths, but really just saying we're all whole people and we can connect and communicate. But here's the thing, when you are communicating concern about the future of an organization, even with the good intent of authenticity, you can create anxiety. So all of that connection is important, yet you may say something with the good intent of creating authenticity, and people in your team may go home and be emotionally, may have emotional crises because of something that you said with the intent of creating authenticity. So, thinking about, especially when talking about we are doing, we're going to have to reorganize. We need to um, look at a different way of measuring performance. These kind of conversations. The Our competitors are doing X, Y, and Z. You have to think about when it comes to the future, how do you frame that information? Because when leaders communicate stress, and this is most important, a sense of helplessness, it has a trickle down effect on employees. So you can be stressed, but the key is being able to communicate that you are not feeling helpless or I have this information, I need to share it with you. I haven't had a chance to think or process it. It will have a trickle down effect and it will have a greater impact than even how you may be feeling it. So you're like, okay, well, I'm supposed to develop these authentic relationships, but now, Christy, you're telling me I need to be careful. So here's something to consider, a two-pronged approach to addressing emotional contagion. The first piece, you have to acknowledge the difficult circumstance or circumstances. You just need to say them. You have to say the hard thing or the hard things. And you should take time to consider what those things are because you may not have had a chance to process to even say, what is the circumstance? So you need to be able to clearly articulate what the circumstance is. And you need to have authentic affirmations of confidence in the team's ability to overcome challenges and confidence in the future of the organization. And we all know sometimes that takes time. So if you get something, you may have to, I like to say, get yourself together and consider what you are going to share, what your communication plan is going to be, and consider um, how you have confidence, being able to say, yes, I'll make it up. We are not going to be able to replace one of the openings on our team. So we're all going to have to take some things on. Yet we have a track record of success. We work together. We have the skills we need, and this is not forever. But during the short period of time, we're going to do this. And this is actually going to help us through this difficult time so that we can get to where we know we need to be as an organization. That is an example of acknowledging the difficult circumstances, but also being able to be authentic in your confidence that it is possible to overcome what you're facing. Leader behavior and emotional contagion. And I'm so glad we had the breakouts and some of your feedback because it ties right into this. So, what can you do? So, think about your communication style and process. So being able to be more supportive in how you communicate versus anxious. And how might you know that you are showing up more supportive than anxious? You may have to role play it. You have to record yourself, um, listen, maybe work with a peer who also has to do the same communication because choice of words, a small choice of word can tweak and take something that would have sounded more anxious to more of a supportive style. And then relationship building, and this is something you have to be doing on a regular basis. When you have a strong connection, it can buffer negativity. So part of what we have to remember is we are all going to have bad days. We're human and we are whole people. And if something happens at home, sometimes that will influence how you show up in the workplace, vice versa. We are whole people. We don't get to tuck a piece of ourselves under the pillow and leave it there when we come into work in the morning. So, but if people know you, they will give you the benefit of the doubt and assume good intent. And they'll say, you know what? I know Christy. Something must be going on because she usually doesn't show up like that. And then just self awareness. And this is where we hear about emotional intelligence a lot. But really, this is holding up the mirror and thinking about how you want to show up. But let me throw this out too, not overcorrecting. So I want to make sure I really tease this out. Sometimes we will have an experience with a leader, with a situation, we'll say, no matter what, I'm never going to show up like that. So we shift all the way to the other side. But sometimes that is not valuable. Being emotionally intelligent is understanding in some situations, you may have to show up differently and considering what is best. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you are leading two project teams, and one project team has been with the organization a very long time, and another project team was acquired within the last year. What they will know and understand in your communication will be different. So how you talk and tailor your your communication with them is going to be different. So being able to say to one team, we've been together, we've been through X, Y, and Z, we're going to be fine, may land one way with a team that you don't know as well. You may have to spend some time to say, let's talk a bit about the history here and our track record and how and bring them into some of that historical pieces. But most of all, processing your own feelings prior to communicating difficult information is critical because I like to say your negative feelings will sometimes leak out inappropriately. So someone you may have go in, you really haven't processed, someone can ask a question and it may make you angry. It may make a tear pop into your eye. It may make you nervous and people will pick up on that. So being able to think of the situation and say to yourself, what am I concerned about? What am I, what do I need to reflect on before I share this information? So tips for managing emotional contagion. Number one, and we've talked about all these pieces, self-awareness. Be aware of your emotions and how they might affect others. Positive influence. Strive to project positive emotions and create a positive environment, especially in leadership or team settings. So let's talk about that. If your positivity is inappropriate, it will not come out as authentic. And there are times where the only positive thing you might be able to say is, I believe we can make it through this together. But hearing that, if people hear that, That's very, very important. Second, time to reflect. Stopping to reflect before speaking helps you to manage your emotional responses and reduce occurrences of negative emotional contagion. And as we heard from one of the groups, sometimes you may, because of the makeup of your team, you may choose to share a portion of information, but there may be certain individuals who need more. And being patient and knowing that people will come and want to process. Sometimes when changes happen, people can feel that their hard work was for nothing. And being able to come to you and talk through how those things are changing, yet they still drove progress forward in the organization, in your team, et cetera, can be very, very valuable in helping people to process challenging times. And that goes right into the empathy. Consider how others might receive the information, and just make sure that people can know they can come to you and that you may have to carve out time so that you can be open and ready for those conversations. So if I come and I want to talk to Mike, but he looks busy, I may just say, well, it wasn't that important. But if you can, have time carved out to say, I know we're all busy, but I've carved out some time, today just from 5 to 5:15. If you want to pop in, or call, we can chat. And being a supportive listener, allowing team members to express themselves, and you don't necessarily have to agree or disagree, just say, I hear you. Sometimes just allowing people to speak out loud allows them to make sense of the information. And the final one is levity. And I'm going to say, use this with caution because sometimes um, it it may not land exactly the way you want to, but when you have deep and solid relationships with people, you will know how to leverage levity. And I have this saying, I can't remember who said it. I've said it probably like 50 times now, but I'm not going to take credit for it. But it was a comedian, and he said, the best absolute humor is pain and reflection. So sometimes you can be together with your team and talk about, you know what, we made it through and it was not funny when we were going through that, but now we can go back and laugh. And one day we may find some humor in the difficult times that we're going through now because we got through it together. So I said this at the beginning, and I'm going to say it again. Everyone can demonstrate great leadership in difficult times. I don't care if you have 0 direct reports, 50 or 100, it doesn't matter. We all have an opportunity to do that. And how do we do it? Through self-management, through my team, and across the organization. So, what is the big bow I'd like to say? Your mood is your message, so make it count. So, all the things that we talked about, slowing down, all of these techniques allows you to have an impact and be authentic, but you have choices. And sometimes just slowing down, taking time to make sure your mood is in a place that is going to have the greatest impact is just going to really help you in the moment and long term. And with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for carving time out on this warm day, on this actually cold day. It can be cold unless you're outside of Michigan and you're joining us from California or somewhere else. It might be quite warm, but some of us are very cold, like Erin and Christine kind of have on the same type of sweater and they're, yes, absolutely. So we're trying to stay warm here. Cheryl has her scarf on and we're trying to keep there. But with that, you took time out of your schedule to join us. And I just want to say thank you.